In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Joe. Well, on the latest episode of Jersey, everyone is still reeling from the big fight at Teresa's Tipsy and Tulum party. Teresa's confused about the whole thing. Yeah, she thinks she turned her head for just a minute and missed the whole thing. So yeah, now she's confused and she doesn't know who started it. Then we cut to Marge's house, and can we just talk about her level of decor? I mean, it is something. Some might call that a feast for the senses, and some might call it an assault on the senses. Either way, it is a lot. Anyway, Marge is all stressed out because Joe's PSA level is through the roof. But Joe is cool, calm, and collected, basically because Marge is worrying enough for both of them. Over at Danielle, she's planning her big bougie kids relaunch party, and when she's talking about the guest list, it brings up who's not invited, namely Jennifer Aiden. Danielle recounts what went down between them and says that where she comes from, this is called getting yoked. And after Jen did that to her, she was on full defense. Nate brought up the possibility of her dad being invited to the party, and she did not dispute the fact that it would be nice to have him there. So now Nate's on the case. Over at Dolores and Polly's place, we find out that Dolores has accepted Polly's proposal to officially become partners, business partners. Dolores says that if the business was up and running, she'd be taking a sick day to recover from all the chaos that went down when her two friends started beating each other up. While Dolores was chatting with Polly, Rachel Fuda FaceTimed and told Dolores that she looked exhausted. She didn't look exhausted, she just didn't have any makeup on. Rachel was calling from a juvenile arthritis event that she was hosting. A support group where kids can get together and talk about their experiences with other kids who actually understand what they're going through, which really is so important for them. I mean, my autoimmune disease is hard to deal with and process and make peace with on a daily. As an adult, I can't imagine wrestling with all that as a kid. Dolores gave Rachel the lowdown on what happened at the party, but Rachel wasn't surprised because she'd already read a bunch online, stuff that was leaked by Teresa's people. Then it is time for church, and Father Joe is warming up to perform a very special ceremony. The marriage of Melissa's cousin Nick to his partner Mike. And Father Joe's words were the most beautiful expression of love and acceptance and gratitude and the true meaning of family. Joe said that when he met Nick, he just assumed that he was straight and would say, "Oh, you must be knocking the ladies dead," because he was such a good-looking guy. Joe said he didn't realize that his assumptions and subsequent narrative came with a burden that was boxing Nick into a reality that wasn't his truth. And then Joe said that on the day that Nick opened up and came out to him, he looked at him and hugged him and loved him more than ever. And I'm just bawling like a baby, almost like I am now talking about it. Just when I thought I couldn't love Joey Gorga anymore, I do. And the gratitude that he has in his heart for Melissa's family is just divine. I love the DeMarcos just for how much they love Joe. That's what families should feel like. Over at Jennifer Aiden's, Teresa and Messy Fessy get together for some crudité and a recap of what happened according to Jennifer. And this is where the trouble begins to brew between Teresa and her loyal lieutenant, Jen. Teresa says that she feels like she's in the middle, and she feels bad because she's going to be going to Danielle's party and she knows that Jennifer won't be there. Teresa says, "Are you okay with me going?" Jen says, "It's fine. You know I'm not going to tell you not to go." And then in confessional, Jen says, "I'm disappointed in Teresa that she's going. I thought she was a loyal friend. And then you go to a girl's party that hit me? Like, that's no good." Back in scene, Teresa says, "Danielle hasn't done anything to me. Yet." Jen says, "I don't care who it is. If someone punches you upside the head, I'm not gonna fucking like them. Whether they did something to me or not. I would never." Then cut back to confessional and Jen says, "I'm just disappointed. And my feelings are hurt. My feelings are hurt." Then in Teresa's confessional, she says, "Listen, I'm not trying to upset Jennifer, but I'm friends with both of them. I just want them to make up and move on." Then Marge finally gets her long overdue copy of Jackie's book, unsigned, and honestly, after everything that's gone down in the last few weeks between the two, why would she send the book at this point? So strange. Then Marge calls the doctor about Joe's test results and does not get good news. The doctor wants an MRI and then possibly a biopsy. And Marge is clearly shook. Then it's time for the big bougie relaunch and Danielle gets some bad news. Her dad won't be making it, but not because he doesn't want to, but because he's sick. He might have COVID, and you can see that Danielle was very much looking forward to seeing him and bummed that he won't be there. Rachel and her daughter arrive, and then we see Tiffany with the pretty teeth, followed closely by Messy Fessy, who said to Danielle, "Listen, I don't think either one of you expected it to escalate to that point. And Danielle said that Jen said the most horrific things about her that night that were not true. And that was when she realized that a person who she thought was a friend was actually the darkest human being on the face of the earth. She said the triggers for her were that she stole from a charity. And in that split moment, Danielle lost a friend. And I get it. Rachel Fuda chimes in and says that there are terrible things that you could say about a person, but stealing from a charity is top 5. Fessler told Danielle that Jen thought she was actually profiting off the charity. And Danielle said, that's psychotic. Then Rachel says that what Jen's really doing is questioning Danielle's integrity, and that this isn't the first time. Rachel says the last 3 times they've been together, it's been a different accusation. Then Danielle looks at Fessler and says, I actually prayed to God that he has mercy when he puts down her karma. I actually prayed on that, she said. And then Fessler looks at her and says, Danielle, she didn't sleep with your husband. And Danielle says, well, she shoved me aggressively. And Fessler says she has a very different story about that as well. And Danielle says, wait, she has a different story than shoving me aggressively? And Jen says, yes. Then Pretty Teeth Tiffany asks what the story was, and Jen Fessler goes on and gives Jen Aiden's version of events, and wraps it up with, and then she clocked me. Danielle says, I couldn't punch her, I had a cup in my hand. And Pretty Teeth Tiffany says, she only threw the drink. Then Fessy gets messy and says to Danielle, you know you were a part of what happened, right? And Danielle says, it sounds like you got her back. And Jen says, I do. I'm friends with her. And Danielle very seriously says, she's lucky I didn't knock her head off her shoulders, Jen Fessler. Then Dolores walks in, followed shortly by Teresa and 2 of her girls. And as soon as Rachel sees them, she walks away to go and find a toddler to talk to. Then Gia oversteps and asks Jen Fessler what John Fuda said. Fessler tries to smooth it over. When she explains to Rachel what she was doing, Rachel blows a gasket and does not want to hear an explanation. Even though in that instance, Fessler was doing the right thing. She wasn't discussing it with Gia, she was defending John. And all her girls tell her to quit campaigning for Teresa. But I want to know what you think. Do you think Gia's overstepping? And do you think that Jen Fessler screwed up? Comment below and let me know.